Anakin was one of the most skilled and iconic lightsaber duelists in the Jedi Order, but like everyone, he didn't start as the finished product we see in Revenge of the Sith. As Obi-Wan's Padawan, he started his journey with a blade like every other Jedi, with the fundamentals of Form 1 Shii-Cho. Being the first form that the Jedi ever developed, this was a very simplistic and basic style, making it perfect for beginners as it was easy to learn and helped you get to grips with handling a weapon as unforgiving as a lightsaber. Now, being the prodigal son he was, Anakin was very quick to pick up the form, and despite starting his lessons much later than the other younglings and Padawans, he had quickly surpassed them in skill, which funnily made group lessons with them pretty boring for him whenever he was left behind while Obi-Wan was on a mission. So, having pretty easily grasped the fundamentals of Shii-Cho, Anakin was now at a crossroads. This is something every Jedi faces at some point in their early development. What form to learn? Some Jedi choose to adopt their master's form due to their respect for them, and it's also just the easiest route, as you have the perfect teacher right there to guide you every step of the way. This was the case for Obi-Wan when he used Ataru in his early years, wanting to be just like his master Qui-Gon Jinn. However, Obi-Wan's current pure defensive form of Sarisu didn't really appeal to the young Anakin, who, like a lot of Jedi, was enticed by the much more flashy and aggressive style of the acrobatic Form 4, Ataru. Not only was it visually stunning with its focus on using your agility and dexterity to outmaneuver your opponent, but also the current Grandmaster and best duelist in the entire Jedi Order, Yoda, was most famous for being a master of Ataru, adding to why it was such a popular choice among young Jedi in this era. Anakin also had a deep respect for Qui-Gon, being both the first Jedi he encountered and the one to free him from a life of slavery. So I'm sure Qui-Gon being an Ataru user also contributed to Anakin's decision to pursue the form. Being the challenging and demanding form that it was, it helped Anakin rapidly progress his abilities as a Jedi. However, as we all know, this would ultimately not be the form that Anakin sticked with. Why? Well, as I mentioned earlier, Qui-Gon had been a master of this form. In his formative years as a Jedi Padawan, Anakin had often asked Obi-Wan detailed questions about his duel with Maul. It was interesting, as the Sith before this point hadn't appeared for over a millennia, yet his very own master had not only seen a Sith before, but had fought one to the death. Of course, Anakin would have been told why it was Obi-Wan teaching him now and not Qui-Gon as originally planned. However, I believe when discussing this duel with Obi-Wan, it would sink in that Qui-Gon, an Ataru master, ultimately lost. Additionally, in this current era, most of the foes that you encounter as a Jedi are blaster users. Ataru doesn't teach great blaster deflection, it's actually a weak point of the form. So, with these reasons in mind, Anakin would decide that Ataru was perhaps not the best path for him. So, when deciding on a new form, he looked at what he had and what he lacked. What he had was an abundance of physical strength that he wasn't currently really leveraging. What he lacked was good blaster deflection skills. Thus, he would embark on what would be his legendary development of Form 5. Form 5 had two variants, but the one that young Skywalker started with was Shien. This is because it's the one that excels in blaster deflection, a choice that would pay off dramatically for him, as any Jedi who wasn't skilled in blaster deflection died in the arena on Geonosis. A weakness of Shien, however, is it wasn't super great with dealing with one-on-one lightsaber combat. It wasn't a huge concern, as again, the vast majority of enemies you had to deal with as a Jedi used a blaster, but this hole in his fighting style did come back to bite Anakin during his duel against Dooku. Now, during this time, we know that Anakin wasn't only learning Shien. As technical as it was, it obviously wasn't as demanding execution-wise as Ataru was, leading me to believe that he picked up the supplement style of Jerkai in order to keep his execution as sharp as possible. Being a dual-wielding form, the precision it demands of the user is obviously extremely high, making it a great practice tool even if you don't primarily use the form. This endeavor would also help him later on when he had his own Padawan to help guide on her lightsaber journey. Jerkai is also good in one-on-one lightsaber combat, which is why Obi-Wan throws Anakin his saber in that duel against Dooku, as he knew that Anakin would have a better chance against Dooku with Jerkai than he would with Shien. And he was right. You can see Skywalker holding his own much better when he had the two sabers. Unfortunately though, at the time the skill gap was just too big, and especially when locked into Shien, Anakin's defeat was inevitable. This defeat was critical in Anakin's development, as it was the ultimate motivator for him to become the most iconic, defining master of Form 5, choosing to now pursue Djem So. This is the alternate route of Form 5 that focuses on lightsaber combat. Its principles are incorporating a solid foundation of defense, but critically leveraging the user's physical strength to follow up with counterattacks and creating holes in your opponent's efforts to defend. This was perfect for Anakin, as not only did it bolster the aspect of his style that was currently weaker, but also it played to his natural strengths. Anakin was already a physically strong person, but the addition of the mechanical hand only increased that strength. The only drawback of this style is that it didn't teach great footwork, meaning against a more agile and dexterous opponent, you could get outmaneuvered and end up being caught out in your sluggish, more rooted base. Given Skywalker's main adversary at this point was Dooku, that was not really a great weakness to have, as Dooku was a master of Makashi, a form that excelled in footwork. So, recognizing this flaw, Anakin decided not to just simply adopt the form, but push it to its limits of its potential by adding in some of those fundamentals of Ataru that he had already learned. By pairing the dynamic and fluid footwork of Ataru with the solid defense and oppressive offense of Djem So, Anakin developed Form 5 into something that could be considered unbeatable by most people, truly rounding out his game and becoming a generational duelist. And that shows when he faces Dooku in Revenge of the Sith. In this matchup, Dooku is supposed to have the advantage in maneuverability, exploiting the more sluggish Skywalker. However, with the footwork of Ataru, Anakin's offense was nothing short of dominant. Dooku can't create distance and even begin to maneuver his way around Skywalker. The whole time he is right there in Dooku's face, and what was before an advantageous matchup is now a complete nightmare, as he cannot contend with these close-range, oppressive, heavy strength-based attacks. Ultimately, his defense is broken and Skywalker is the victor, in his final moments acknowledging that Anakin was not only a master of Form 5, but probably the greatest Form 5 stylist that there will ever be. And while Anakin's journey ended here, the path was not over. For after being mutilated on Mustafar, Vader had to go back to the drawing board. Physically, he was just straight up unable to perform Form 5 as he once had. The suit was very restrictive in its movements, and he couldn't even lift his arms above his head without extreme pain, which is one of the core opening stances of Form 5. He was also much more vulnerable now, as before if he took a cut to the chest, it would suck, but it wouldn't be fatal. Now with this big exposed console there, that was a luxury that he could not afford. There was no one fighting style that addressed all of the limitations that Vader had, so he had to craft his own, diligently studying all the forms and taking what he needed from each one, combining their strengths and eroding his weaknesses. What he ended up with could be considered the perfect fighting style, complete in all aspects and with no holes in his game. This, combined with putting in a lot more effort into mastering the Force, is why he became the monster that he did, feared as the greatest Jedi killer of all time. Very few faced him in an honest duel and lived to tell the tale, ultimately becoming more powerful than even Skywalker managed to be at the end of Revenge of the Sith. Thank you for watching the video. Anakin is my favorite Star Wars character, and I always found Star Wars dueling really cool. Let me know what your favorite duels are in the comments down below. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, and please do not forget to like the video if you enjoyed it so other Star Wars fans can find it, and please do not forget to subscribe. I am on a mission to hit 10,000 subscribers, as that is my new goal for next year. So yeah, with that being said, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye bye.